All right, everyone, welcome in to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is episode 41 here on October the 6th, 2022. I'm Nicholas Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, the United States. And joining me, live from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing on this Thursday evening?
I'm doing great, doing great. Changed my background now. Put my beautiful Rio Branco Stadium, the Decio Vita Stadium, home of Rio Branco, and I'm really good. Things are getting heated in Brazil, on and off the field. A lot of things happening, but in America, it's that time of the year. It's October. It's October. A lot of sports happening, but when it's October, it's both season time.
Yeah, it's getting very chilly up here. Some of the leaves up in the mountains around here are starting to turn red. So you know what that means? It's time for every sport to be happening. Of course, we have NFL, CFB in the middle of their regular seasons. Baseball is about to begin their playoffs. NHL and NBA are about to kick off their seasons. So literally everything. I mean, of course, NASCAR as well. They're finishing up their season as well. So literally everything is going on. It's gonna be hard to keep up with all of it, but we are going to try our very, very best. And we kind of want to start off with a topic that actually kind of applies to both America and Brazil. We don't always necessarily have that, but this week we kind of do, and it's a sad topic. The divorce of Tom Brady and Giselle. How do you say the last name? Butchin?
Gisele Bündchen.
Bündchen. And obviously I'm not going to speak on why it happened. That's a private matter between those two, and a lot of people have speculations of why it happened. Um, but I think I more just wanted to bring it up because I'm just curious what the reaction has been in Brazil. Because here in America, I mean, obviously, people have been throwing around all kinds of accusations against both of them, and you know how things get sensationalized when it comes to celebrities. Um, and I know we were talked about this previously, how in Brazil is not, that Giselle is Tom Brady's wife, like it is here in America. In Brazil, is that Tom Brady is Giselle's husband. Because, Giselle is one of the most iconic Brazilians alive. Like, she literally went out and walked at the Olympics. Like, she is one of the
She,
most famous
she is the
Brazilians on the planet.
supermodel of Brazil. She's like the supermodel. It's like if you ask like what is the Brazilian supermodel, it's her.
Right. So I'm just kind of curious, what have you seen in the Brazilian media from just Brazilian people, like on social media? What has the reaction been like down there? Because here I feel like it's a lot of memes, a lot of people like taking out kind of like their football aggressions against Brady uh, in this situation. But I'm just curious
I,
what that reaction is like there, because I feel like it's a way different reaction
I,
for
I
Brazilians.
oh, Bruno Sloanik. Oh, thanks for listening and watching. He prefers Anna Hickman. She's a TV host and also a supermodel. She's more like a blonde type. Yeah, both are beautiful,
Let's see.
but I feel like here is different. First of all, if here is in a different, let's say, news segment. In America, is in a sports segment. Here, this matter is in a gossip segment, in the famous people kind of segment. It's like here is more treated. It's like if artist, somebody from Hollywood got divorced. So I feel like it's yeah. If Bruno's looking got a point. Is they're making fun of the whole situation, but it's treated like very financial. Like one of the headlines of one of the most famous new like magazines in Brazil website is like the divorce of millions. It's like they're saying the value of the fortune of Tom Brady and Giselle Bündchen. Like analyzing the money they have together and what Giselle's gonna have and like the lawyer situation and I feel like it's just sad the situation, but I, I mean I just feel bad for Brady. I It's just something I felt that happened. I don't know that for sure, but it's my gut feeling is that Tom Brady ended up falling his love of the sport because I feel like when he retired at the beginning of the year, the way I feel he retired was like I'm gonna spend more time with my family. I'm gonna devote more for my wife and my kids. But then when he retired, I think he got Giselle out of the blue. She got blind spotted. She got blindsided, and then I feel like that was not coming back. And I feel like it was courageous for Tom Brady to make that decision. He rather make him. He's like, I still want to play football. I still want to be an athlete. It ended up being sad. I love them as a couple. It was like the perfect union between America and Brazil. But I hope. But the way I see is like, how is this gonna affect Tom Brady's like farewell season? Because everybody thought that was going to be Tom Brady's last season, and there's going to be an effect on him. Let's not kid ourselves. It's like, you know, when something massive like that happens off the field, it affects the athlete on the field.
I mean, it certainly could. It, as they kind of said, leading off this topic. I mean, whatever happened, I seriously doubt it was just the whole football thing. Him wanting to go back. I mean, this one decision like that doesn't. At least I feel like for most couples, like end things, right? Like I think in a lot of situations, stuff builds up over time. So whatever happened is whatever happened, right? From the sports perspective, I think Brady was going to be fine. Like, I mean, the Bucks have a good stretch coming up of some weaker teams. I think they're going to get themselves on track. I know they didn't play well last week against Kansas City, but that's Kansas City. We've seen this story before at Brady teams where they'll start off slow in the regular season and they'll get going throughout the rest of the season. So I think Brady, the quarterback, because it's a job, right? Like, you know, I mean, you go to the radio station, I go to a TV station. Whatever's going on in our personal life. When we step in the door and we get behind our cameras or get behind our microphones, we just we just do, right. Like we are in the zone, we're in the flow. And Tom Brady, when he gets into that helmet, he gets in that uniform, he's going to be out there focused on winning football games. So I just think from that perspective, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a lot for us to see. And also, by the way, the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos have kicked off, so that'll be an interesting game tonight. Um, we'll see if
And
either one of
it,
these teams can find a consistent offense.
it's Russell Wilson versus Matt Ryan. Interesting quarterback battle.
Yeah,
And, but
in their
but
first seasons in new places as well.
Yeah, and Bruno's Logan got an interesting point. I remember when that happened, the whole babysitter kind of situation. That also it also involved famous actor Ben Affleck, where both of them got involved with the babysitter. Yeah, that
I didn't know about that. I mean, look, here's the thing: I don't keep up with celeb gossip like that. Outside of whatever gets thrown in front of me, maybe anything outside of the Kanye West drama, I don't really know about. So,
was
yeah.
Christine Ozwan.
Oh
She even
Jesus.
took a picture on a plane wearing Tom Brady's Super Bowl rings. That was in August of 2015. So that was already something that had an effect on, and I mean, Bruno Slonick just throwing comment after comment. He said like, I mean, it's my I mean, I just hope for the best of them. They find, uh, you know, they find peace in their decision, and I hope they can find a good path moving forward for both of them because I
And also for
admire.
their kids as well.
Yeah,
And that's what really sucks about this about any divorce really is what happens to the kids who didn't ask for it. So that um,
the only
I
thing
hope
that
everything works out for them.
now it makes me sad because it's now practically they're practically finished any chance of Tom Brady coming to Brazil because I was always hoping he would like come here because of Giselle and he will go to the same game and I'm covering and I'll be like freaking out because nobody, probably 90% of the stadium don't know who he is, but I know who he is, and I'll be like, taking pictures. And but he already went once to Brazil. He watched a Grêmio game, the team from the south that Gisele Bündchen supports. But I just, it's just sad. It was a union that I always loved, especially because you know, I lived in US and I was Brazilian, so that was kind of like the something that was, kind of beautiful union. But I hope for the best. Hope their family, both of them, their kids, find a good path moving forward. I feel like they're hopefully they'll have like a civil kind of divorce.
Well, I mean, we'll see about that. That's as I said. I don't know what has all led up to this, and that'll be for the lawyers and arbitrators to decide. Because it's like the movie. Have you ever seen? It's called Marriage Story. It has Scarlett Johansson and God, was it Adam Driver. And the whole movie is about this couple who like they got together and then they ended up falling apart and they end up getting divorced and all that. And um, it's gonna be kind of like that. So it really sucks. But anyway, I think it's time for us to kind of move on to some other topics here. Uh, let's go to some baseball here because my Atlanta Braves have once again won the NL East for the fifth straight year in a row. They swept the New York Mets over the weekend. And I can only imagine what Mets fans, the Mets organization is feeling right now because they had the NL East on lock the entire season. They had this division won. They were up by 10 and a half games at one point, and they invested all that money. They have all the players you could possibly want, all the pitching you possibly could want. And it still was not enough to win the NL East. And now they're going to have to fight for their lives this weekend in the wild card round. Uh, is this a complete failure for the Mets, or could they redeem themselves in the postseason? Like if they went on a run like the Braves last year, would people forget about this NL East disaster, or especially if they were to get knocked out by San Diego in the wild card weekend? How much of a failure is this season truly for the New York Mets?
I feel like the Mets organization definitely Steve Cohen's definitely going to rethink a lot about what happened in this regular season because again, when you had a 10-game lead over a team that should have, everybody expect to have a World Series hangover, have some key players injured, and it's such a Braves kind of thing to rile up and to come back and win the division. And we're gonna be joined as well some Major Baseball with Bruno Slonik. He is a New Jersey native. Always watch our show. Hey Bruno, how's it
Yo,
going?
Bruno, what's up?
Hello, my friends. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm a biggest fan of you guys. And it's a pleasure to be here talking about something that I love, that is baseball, right?
Oh yeah, and it's perfect time of the year too because tomorrow is the beginning of October for sure because it's the beginning of the playoffs. Um, yeah, Bruno, just what are your thoughts on how the NL East finished this year? I mean, my Braves, we got off to a really, really slow start this year. I feel like we had a championship hangover, but around June, we kind of woke up and we're able to chase down the Mets and took them out this weekend. So it's
Exactly.
gonna be
And my father is a big Mets fan, and I told him back in June. I said, "Man, the Braves are coming because they won the World Championship. So I mean they must react. They had a slow start, but they have a great team, a great roster, and they had some great moves during trade deadlines. And the Mets got swept by the Cubs. Like Pete Alonso said, they asked Pete Alonso about, do you think it's fair to be playing the wild card game, winning 101 games? And he said, man, we got swept by the Cubs. So the Braves, had a great second half, and the Mets now have a really difficult job because they have, I mean, they have home field advantage against the Padres, but the Padres have a great, powerful offense, and if they pass through the Padres, they have the Dodgers, and it's a tough path, and I don't think they're gonna get it. And the other side, we still have, Pujols and the record. and I think it's St. Louis is going to be on fire for the series. So I mean, anything can happen. October baseball is amazing. And what do you guys think about the National League?
I mean, I feel like the a whole Holbert Pujols situation uh, kind of fueled the St. Louis Cardinals. I think the St. Louis Cardinals a great team, but the Pujols kind of like chased for home runs, and it kind of made them stronger. And now they have nothing to lose. They won the division. Pujols got the records. I mean, they're gonna face the Phillies, which are a tougher team as well. They finally broke the streak of not making the playoffs, with all the acquisition they got over the years, especially when they got Bryce Harper. They were like, we finally have our guy. We're gonna make it. It took a while, but the Phillies make it. But it just show how strong the NL East is. Three teams make to the playoffs from the NL East. The only two didn't make it because they were tanking. The Marlins are always tanking, and the Nationals, they start tanking, last season, and they just really, really tanked this season. So, in comparison, the NL Cent, I was expecting that for the NL West, like especially the Giants. The Giants finished strong last season, but they made it a 500, season. But in terms of matchups, of course, I feel like the best matchup is the Mets and the Padres, because the Padres got a really loaded. Because, like, for example, Brunik, you mentioned the Mets acquisition, the trade deadline. How about the Padres acquisition, the trade deadline? Like, for example, Juan Soto, you know, and I feel like there's a lot of pressure for the Padres to make it, because they got so many good talent. Fernando Tatis, even though he's not playing, Manny Machado, Juan Soto. It's like there's pressure on both sides, but I feel like it's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, you mentioned about the Padres team, and I think they are one of the most expensive teams in the whole sports industry in US, because they are spending a lot of money and they really want a championship. And people think, oh, they were far behind on their division and stuff, but they are not a regular season team. They are a postseason team, and we know that they got some problems because of the suspensions and stuff. But uh, I mean, the Mets have home field advantage, but the Padres have offense advantage, and the Mets have a great pitching too. So it's gonna be a great game. And I heard that A Rod, Michael Kay, David Cohn, they're gonna be broadcasting that game. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and it's going to be really fascinating because, like, I mean, all these games are going to be back to back to back. There's going to be baseball on all day. Starting on that NL side, I mean, just the pressure the Mets are going to have in this series, and the Padres. Yes, there were high expectations for them this season, but of course they lose Fernando Tatis, uh, to a suspension, and I feel like they've kind of flown under the radar since, because they were so far behind the Dodgers. But now, for a long time, it seemed like we were setting up for a Padres Braves matchup, but now they're going to go to New York, and the Mets now, I feel like, really have to win this series to kind of avoid their season being a total failure. And I'm just really fascinated to see if the Mets can step up to the moment with the pressure. In this Phillies Cardinals series, I feel like the Phillies there have a lot more pressure, right? Because their fan base has been very vocal about how much they've struggled over the past couple of seasons, and they, and they still really didn't have an amazing season. They still finished third in the division, right? But um, yeah, they still have a chance here to maybe go and do something at St. Louis, and I just I think the NL East teams here, both the Mets and the Phillies, have way more pressure, and it'll be very interesting to see. Even though I think the Phillies probably have the more talent right now than the Cardinals, to see if the pressure gets them. Because I feel like a lot in postseason baseball, you see pressure get to players, and a lot of times it seems like whichever team handles it better performs the best in October.
Yeah, and we back in the days, the wild card was really different, right? Because uh, usually one wild card team would go directly to the division series, and then they created the one game elimination game. Even though they were not tied, they got to the spots like the Yankees and Red Sox that Gus and I broadcasted live to Brazil. Was the first playoff game ever in Brazil broadcasting radio. It was fun, right?
Oh my
Many
god.
hours
I,
there.
oh my god, that was historical. Yeah, that's true. Like me and Bruno was the first ever Brazilian radio Portuguese broadcast of postseason baseball. It was a historical game. Garrett Cole, oh my God, he wants to for. I think Garrett Cole wants to forget that day. We want to remember. Garrett Cole wants to forget that day. But yeah,
Yeah,
but I think what Major League Baseball wants is to create more urgency games. Like because they have 162 games, a long season. But now they want to create more games on the postseason because that's what drives ratings. That's what drives fans to like watch on television or stadiums. That's what people care about. Postseason baseball. So they want to increase the number of games. Now it's a 3 game series, which I think is fair because if you think about it, you play 162 games and then your whole season is down to 1 game. I don't think that's fair. Now 3 games, it's kind of you can see who's the best team.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree because I mean that's what you're playing all year is free 4 game series. So it's absolutely, I think the best formats could be far more exciting. Like I know a couple of years ago when we did this for the 2020 COVID season, I hope they bring back that ESPN squeeze play where you could like go back and forth between all the games because that was awesome. That was so awesome. And I'll tell you the one team I'm most excited to watch this weekend, the Seattle Mariners. Back in the playoffs for the first time in 21 years. They're going to Toronto to play the Blue Jays, a young, exciting team. To me, I mean, I know Padres Mets has the most shine on it, but that Mariners Blue Jays series, I think, might be the most exciting. I mean, the Sky Dome up in Toronto, we know how that place starts rocking in the postseason. I think about the God, who was that hit the homer against the Rangers back in 15? It was a
Oh,
free run homer in Game 5.
Jose Bautista.
Yeah, Bautista. Yeah, um, and he hit that ball, and the roof basically came off the place in Toronto, and I know it's
And
just
I think
anytime
Toronto
there's a
has
playoff series in Toronto, I
and
love
this,
watching it.
the Seattle also went to the postseason with a walk off home run, right? And the stadium went on, nuts. It was amazing, and like you said, the Seattle fans are crazy, and people are having memes talking about, bring back Ichiro just for one pitch. He deserves to be in playoffs. But as you guys mentioned, imagine on the American League side, we have a possibility of having Toronto, Tampa, and the Yankees. The division series. So you see how strong is that division. And Baltimore had a great year as well, and the Red Sox did not, but for some time along the way, everybody was above 500. So the American League side is very very strong as well.
Yeah, I'll say this though with the American League side though. I mean, the AL Central by far was the worst division in the entire league this year. The Cleveland Guardians, and obviously, I think at this point most people are used to them being the Guardians right now instead of the Indians. Um, they've had some really rotten postseason luck. I mean, obviously, outside of going to the World Series in 16 and falling short to the Cubs, and they they have struggled to win series. And to me, when I look at this matchup against the Rays, I think the Rays are a far better team. I think the Rays are going to go to Cleveland and they're going to win this series because they have these pieces, and they always seem to have these pieces where they may not be household names, but they're effective. They're going to work together, and they're going to find ways to win baseball games.
And I feel like no Guardians fans were expecting to make to the postseason. Everybody thought if everybody thought the White Sox were gonna win the division because the way they finished last season, because all the talent they had. But the Guardians kind of riled and won the division. But I think they're the weakest team to win the division. If you like ask, like even the Phillies it would have won the NL Central, and they finished
Oh,
third.
easily.
Yeah.
I think
But
any
one
of the other teams in the playoffs would have won that division.
But one thing I want to ask Bruno, I've been dying to talk about it, is now the regular season is over. The thoughts on Aaron Judge record 62 home runs. How historical was that for the Yankees organization?
I mean, it's incredible, right? It's always with the Yankees because we have Babe Ruth, and they compare what Babe Ruth said when he hit it 60, and he said, "I want to see another son of a do that," So he was a very rude guy. And then when Judge hit it the 60, and he said. Oh my God, it's a pleasure, it's an honor. And he was very polite about it. So they said, oh my God, how times have changed. But it was historical for my son, and my son is a huge Yankee fan. And he followed the whole season long. And through July, we watched the 61 movie of Roger Maris from ESPN, because he never heard the story. He knew the record, but he didn't watch it. So he said, "Oh my God, I think Judge is gonna do it." And I said, "No, no way. It's too much pressure, and it's that the year that he needs to renew his contract. He needs a new contract." So, but my son said, "No, no, he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. He's much more calmer than Roger was, because we saw in the movie that Roger was losing hair and smoking a lot, and Judge, was pretty calm through the entire situation. The guy's a rock. And he kept hitting. He kept hitting. At one point of the season, he had double the number of home runs of the second place. It was incredible, and for me, which is amazing, that he's clean. He's not on steroids or anything. So, and he's a machine. I used to follow Judge back in high school, because I used to write about high school football, and he was a great football player in high school. He was a great basketball player, and he was an amazing baseball player. So he could have gone, three ways. And I confess to you guys that I was afraid after he hit the 61, the 61st. I thought that he wasn't gonna hit the 62nd, because the guys were not pitching to him. They were pitching all around him, a lot of walks. And then came the Texas Rangers. And, I read the news today that the Yankee fans have donated a lot of money to the Texas Rangers Foundation, because they were actually the only team who actually pitched to Judge. So that's amazing. They play a fair game. And when Judge hit the 62nd, I was with my son here. He went crazy, but the whole stadium went nuts. We saw the kid jumping from the stands trying to catch. The ball was worth $6 million, $6 million. And the guy catch it, the guy who caught the ball, he did a great catch, and he
I
he
heard he
won
like
himself $6 million.
I heard he like kept the ball because he's like wealthy. He's like a very established dude. So he's like, I'm not selling it. It's like that's for my collection. But now
Yeah, I got to
I
get out of there. I mean, you got to get out of there with that ball, because I mean, you can sell that baby for quite a mill. I would ask them on the Yankees as well. I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because they got to go through the divisional round. But let's say the Yankees and Astros take care of business in the divisional round. They meet in the ALCS. Just how big is this series for Judge's legacy? I mean, yeah, the Yankees, the Astros have been their kryptonite for several years now, heading back to the Astros sign stealing scandal back in 2017. I mean, it feels like the Yankees at some point, they got to get over the Houston hump. They got to find a
Yeah,
way to get past the Astros.
yeah. My for example, I grew up hating the Red Sox as a Yankee fan, living in New Jersey. Right, we had the 2003 2004 series, and we hated each other. And my son, when you ask him what his biggest rival is, he says the Astros. And I want to kill him, because I said, God, man, you're crazy, because we hate the Red Sox. But his generation followed through the whole scandal of the Astros. And after the main scandal, we also had a second scandal who was never investigated, or if it was investigated, it was never announced. That was the Altuve wiring. Don't read my shirt, walk off home run, right? From
2017. It was the 2017 when he went against
Chapman.
at Chapman, Rose Chapman.
Yeah, and he said, "Don't rip my shirt." And we had seen him ripping his shirt off, and he said, "Oh, I said it this time because my wife is jealous." And so my son really hates the Astros, and I think it's gonna be a great revenge. And I think right now they are the best two teams in the American League. So if everything follows its course, we're gonna have a great championship series.
Yeah, I mean, crazy if we get another Yankees Astros and then NL. What if we get another Braves Dodgers? I mean, for repeat of that series. Of course, obviously, the Braves had their revenge last year, but the Dodgers, I feel like, because they spend more than basically anyone on their roster,
Right.
and I feel like they think they should find a way to the World Series here. But obviously, the Atlanta Braves are going to have something to say about that.
And I feel like the executives at Fox would like be praying for this scenario to happen. And like if the Dodgers and the Yankees make it to the World Series, like the Fox executives are gonna have the time of their lives. It's like the ratings for that series, that World Series, Yankees and Dodgers are gonna be massive. Massive. It's gonna be like records. It's like, two biggest markets, two biggest brands in baseball right now. It's like, oh my, I can't even imagine the ratings for the series.
And
What
baseball is on
sucks is
fire
not
right
having
now
Joe Buck.
because sorry to interrupt, buddy. But baseball is on fire because the Aaron just hit the 62nd, and we also had Garrett Cole breaking the Yankees strikeout record. We also have Pujols breaking Babe Ruth RBI record and chasing the home run record, because if he gets three more, he gets it right. And so the whole baseball stuff is on fire right now, and they actually made a pool right last week in America, and for the first time in a long time, people are more interested in baseball than football right now. They're saying, "Look, baseball is on fire right now, and football is only on the beginning. So we'll catch up later. But right now, I have to watch what's happening because it's history, right? It's history in front of our eyes."
Yeah, I mean, and that's great for the game. Like the game needs storylines. They need people to be invested in it. And people, when you look at all the potential storylines here, the Yankees trying to get revenge on the Astros. You got Aaron Judge with his record, Albert Pujols in his last run at it. The Seattle back in the postseason for the first time. The Rays, I guess trying to find ways to continually endear themselves to their fan base because I mean they can't get people to come to their games. There are so many storylines to this postseason that I think are going to help draw people in, which is what they need to compete against football. And that's really what the MLB is they're trying to find a way to get October back to being a baseball month instead of being just another football month, and because I want to see MLB have October be their month. Because I mean, that's the whole idea of the leaves are falling, the air is getting cooler, and there's playoff baseball on. So I really do think that this year it's going to be probably one of the most entertaining playoffs we've ever seen. Although I'm going to kind of miss Joe Buck being the main Fox guy, but we'll see how Joe Davis handles some of the big moments. In
And you are the first guy that I meet that likes Joe Buck, because the baseball fans they usually make fun of him, but I like him. I grew up listening to the guy. He is October baseball, but the baseball fans they really hate the guy, and I never understood why.
I don't know. I feel like he has like that perfect big game voice, And admittedly, now on ESPN, I watch Eli and Peyton more just because they're so entertaining. But still, like I think it's a great addition for ESPN to have him and Buck over there. But it's kind of sad that we're not seeing him do that October baseball
I
anymore.
I imagine he's gonna call some games for ESPN or not.
No,
Yeah,
I think
Michael.
I think
I heard that Michael K, the Yes main announcer, right? The Sia from Yankees. I heard that ESPN is looking to give him a big contract, and A Rod is on the deal. David Cohn is on the deal because it was a speculation that David Cohn could be the next Yankee manager. But then after Jeter got out of the Marlins, they say, "Oh, maybe Jeter is next," you know. And so Cohn it will focus more on his broadcast career now. But for sure, it's they're trying new guys because it's a whole new generation of young uh, people watching baseball now, and and they want the game to be a little more funny, the announcer and stuff. But I think it's gonna be fun to see those new guys now. They are going to run the wild card games.
yeah, I'm very excited to see how this weekend goes. So I guess let's all pick winners. Well, I guess we'll start with the NL series. How do we feel about Phillies and Cardinals?
Oh, I got Cardinals 2-1.
I think Cardinals also because of the Pujols situation and Molina, and I think and we know that Cardinals playoff mode is a little different, but Phillies, they are coming, in a whole new. It's a Cinderella season for them. They're coming back from. It was a horrible beginning of the season. Now they're coming on back. It's gonna be a great game, but I think for the sake of the baseball, we need to see Pujols a little longer.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with both of you. I've got the Phillies and no, the Cardinals. The Cardinals in three. The St. Louis in the postseason is, they're really, really good. They have a pedigree, and of course, the winner of this series goes on to play Atlanta, and Atlanta's had horrible luck against St. Louis in some of our recent series against them. I think about infield fly rule 2012. I think about having 10 runs scored on us in 2018. So St. Louis is not a team I want to see, but hopefully with the World Series last year and how this roster has evolved over time, the Braves would be able to handle a 5-game series against St. Louis, but they haven't done well against them in the past. All right, the other NL series, we have Mets and Padres. The winner goes on to play the Los Angeles Dodgers. Who is winning?
I'm gonna start this because Gus is a big Mets fan, so but I'm gonna be neutral about it. I think the Mets will win it's gonna be a tough battle, but I think the home field advantage, the City Field is hard to play there, and Peter Alonso wants really bad to be on a big game on the postseason. So, and the Mets have a great pitching. Everybody's rest. We have some people out of injury, but I think the Mets will pass. They will move on.
I have also the Mets winning. I feel like, as Bruno mentioned, they have pitchers that are rested. I think they have strong power. I feel like Jacob DeGrom and Pete Alonso deserve to be, in the divisional series. They had been playing such a great baseball, and they now finally made it to the postseason. So but I think the the Padres are going to put up a fight. So I think it's going to be 2-1 2-1 Mets.
I hate to be the contrarian, but I feel like the Mets, with how the season unraveled for them, given that lead away, it just feels like a team that's gonna suffer some sort of collapse on their home field. Yeah, I feel like there's one or two baseball teams every year that do this, and I feel like the Mets might be one of those teams this year. I know the Padres don't have Fernando Tatis, but they have a lot of other talent. They have Machado. Um, I just have a feeling San Diego finds a way in three. I'm going with a bit of the upset pick here, which would set up a Padres Dodgers divisional round. So that would be a very interesting series there, because obviously the Dodgers smoked the Padres in the regular season, but throw that out the window. Now you have a 5-game series in theory if that were to happen.
And no, you have a great point. For me, we are discussing to see who loses to the Dodgers, because they're going to be rested and the roster, it's.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I think the Mets are better equipped to handle the Dodgers or to have a shot of upsetting them. But I feel like here this is a really dangerous spot. Whoever lost the NL East battle between the Mets and the Braves was going to be in a really dangerous spot here against the Padres. And unfortunately, the Mets came out on that end of the deal for the NL East title, at least in my opinion. All right, on the AL, Rays and Guardians. Who are we taking here to go to New York to play the Yankees?
The Rays are gonna swap. The Rays are gonna swap. 2-0, easy peasy.
Yeah, I will follow, guys. It's gonna be an easy one, and I will just make it quicker because I think the Toronto is also gonna move on easily. We're gonna have Toronto. We're gonna have the Rays. We're gonna have the Yankees and the Astros. I think they are the best 4 teams in the American League, and it's fair that they can be there as well as the other side. Is fair that the Dodgers, the Braves, and whoever passes along be there but the American League needs to be them. Needs to be them. It's gonna be a great division series.
So thank you so much for Bruno Slonik for joining our episode 44 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. Always a pleasure. We hope to have you more during postseason baseball.
Absolutely, definitely. Come on anytime, man. And thank you so much for being one of our loyal viewers here, our loyal listeners. However you want to look at on Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. All right. So let me finish it out here. I'll take the Rays in 2. They're just a much better team than Cleveland. They'll go to New York. And real quick on the Mariners and Blue Jays. I think the Mariners will give them a run for it. I think the Mariners win a game, but as I said, I just think that atmosphere in Toronto. I think this Blue Jays roster is really talented. They're having to literally go. Mariners have to travel to a different country to play this game. Give me the Blue Jays in 3.
Oh, I'm gonna be the contrary. I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be the Mariners. I think the Mariners, without like finally making the postseason after 2 decades, I think it's gonna be the Mariners.
Yeah, hey, I hope so. Look, I don't know if you've ever watched John Boyce's documentary on Seattle on the Mariners, but it's so captivating. And ever since the Braves won the MLB, the next team I want to see win it is the Mariners. So I hope they pull it off, but I have my doubts. But anyway, we'll definitely have way more in MLB. Oh, go ahead.
But still in baseball, real quick, I was going to talk with the Brazilian talk we're going to have just now. This week we had the qualifiers for the World Baseball Classic, which is going to take place in March 2023 in Tokyo, Japan, and Miami, Florida. And we had the European qualifying and the Latin America qualifying. In the European was Great Britain and the Czech Republic who advanced. And in the Latin America, that was hosted in Panama City, was a doozy. Was such a very Brazil played Panama. The winner will qualify, and the loser was going to face the winner of Argentina and Nicaragua. So Brazil had a chance on Tuesday to qualify. They lost 4-0. And then on Wednesday, Brazil faced Nicaragua, a team they won in the second round, but they couldn't get it done, lost 3-1. So Panama and Nicaragua advanced, both of them for the first time. Nicaragua for the first time ever. Panama was the third time. And they're going to join Venezuela, United States, South Korea, Puerto Rico, Netherlands, Mexico, Japan, Israel, Italy, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Colombia, Taiwan, China, Canada, and Australia to play in the World Baseball Classic in 2023. I think I love World Baseball Classic. I mean, in 2017 was a historical event. I remember how fans down in Miami were electric, especially when you have Dominican Republic and now Panama playing, but in Venezuela probably, in Cuba as well. So it's going to be a really crazy. And I think United States are going to have interesting names. One player that confirmed was Paul Goldschmidt. I think he's a great player, former Arizona
Yeah, I
player.
mean, there's a ton of MLB players on. I mean, we got Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, Will Smith, Pete Alonso, Trevor Story, Nolan Ariando, Tim Anderson, Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper, Cedric Mullins, Mike Trout, Kyle Tucker. I mean, those are some legit superstars. I mean, this is almost getting dream team levels of talent that are on this team for the U.S.
Oh yeah, because I think it's in 1992 happened to basketball. I think it's football probably not gonna happen because football is still a long way to have like a structured tournament with countries around the world. But when you have a chance to wear your country's t-shirt, you carry your country on your sport that you play, it's always chills. It always feels different. So of course those players like Paul Goldschmidt and Bryce Harper and even Mookie Betts and the Latin players, especially the Latin players, they want to represent their countries, especially playing in US. Uh, and US want to go back to back. They won their first ever title in 2017 in a historical match versus Puerto Rico in a sellout Dodger Stadium. So I think it's going to be great. I'm just sad Brazil couldn't make it. Second time they came close to play. They also couldn't qualify in the 2017 one. But in the 2013 they qualified but couldn't make it the first round. But I mean, Brazil is a long way to go to have like a strong baseball team. We're still a very amateur, like our best stadium of baseball in Brazil is kind of like a single A baseball at best. So, but I'm proud of those players. I'm proud of Paulo Orlando, Andre Rienzo, Leonardo Reginato, and the others. They're like I'm proud of them, but sad Brazil couldn't make it.
Right, and all that really matters is they gave their best effort for their own country, and they put their best foot forward. And for this event, I think that's what matters: is to grow the game across the globe. And I think the event does a
It-
good job of it.
yeah, and it's I feel like this was the end of one generation. Was the end of let's say the Paulo Orlando generation. Like Paulo Orlando is like the symbol because he was the first and now and still the only Brazilian player to won a World Series, but you had like Andre Rienzo, the first pitcher. You had Leonardo Reginato. So those players are kind of ending their era, and now it's going to be new players that are coming on. So many Major League Baseball farms. Like one player I still have great hopes for is Eric Pardinho. I watched him play back in 2017 for the Blue Jays rookie team back in Bluefield. If he was playing for Bluefield, but I hope this next generation will keep up the good job of this current generation.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I would love to see Brazil continue to improve moving forward in the uh, in the sport of baseball. All right, real quick here before we start transitioning over into football. Score update: the Denver Broncos lead 3-0 on the Indianapolis Colts early in the second quarter. I think, as many expected, this is a low-scoring affair, but Broncos are on the Colts side of the field, so we'll see if the Broncos can take a lead. Of course, they're playing without Javonte Williams, so Melvin Gordon is now the main running back for Denver, and that's a pretty big loss for Denver early on in the season. But let's talk some college football here, because our Tennessee Volunteers still ranked number 8 in the country, have a huge game this Saturday. They go down to Death Valley for an 11 a.m. Central kickoff against the LSU Tigers. Gus, Yeah, I know people are starting to think about Bama next week. They're thinking down the road to maybe the Georgia game. But we need to hold our horses here. This is a big game. This is a game against a top 25 LSU team that Tennessee has not beaten since 2005. I mean, we haven't even been to Tiger Stadium since 2010. This is a huge, huge deal for Tennessee if they can to go into this game because this is a big for Hinton Hooker. This is big for Josh Heupel. This is big for everyone.
Oh, I 100% agree. I feel like this is a big matchup because first you face a team that wants to like, especially a coach, Brian Kelly. If Brian Kelly got this win, it'll be probably his first win over a top 10 team. So Brian Kelly needs to just win to kind of show that he is growing. He's like making his team better and show like signs of progress on his first year on LSU. And on the other side, it would be like another huge on the road win. I know Pitt win was big. It carried this team to be on the top 10, but it's different. It's the SEC road game is just a different. Like it's not like saying like the Pitt game didn't have a great atmosphere, but Death Valley is different. Death Valley, those 100,000 fans are going to be screaming. They want to see the win because now LSU, who've been the favorites for so many years. I remember back in 2017, they came to Knoxville and they obliterated the Vols. They were so heavily favored. And now it's the opposite. The Vols are the favorite to win this game in that valley.
Right. And I'll be very curious what the factor of this game kicking off at 11 a.m. is going to be because I know a lot of LSU fans were very upset that they didn't get a night game. And Brian Kelly came out and said something I think that was really smart, where he said, in order to get the prime time slots, you got to be a prime time team. LSU, ever since their national championship, has not been a prime time team. To be fair, Tennessee hasn't been a prime time team until the past couple of weeks. So these are two teams that are definitely emerging. Um, Now, getting into the matchup a little bit, obviously we know what Tennessee has. Tennessee has perhaps the best offense in the country. I think it's either them or Ohio State. Ohio State might have a slight advantage. If you look at the yards per game right now, I think it's Ohio State is barely above Tennessee. I have to check because I know last week the Vols were actually no, Tennessee is still number one in the country in terms of yards per game right now with 559.2 yards per game are the Vols. So then you have TCU, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia are your top five. Of course, on the opposite end of this, Tennessee's defense not ranked as high. Maybe not ranked as horribly as they were last year, but still, especially with the passing defense, it's one of the four worst in the entire country. LSU, on the other hand, their offense is nowhere near as explosive as Tennessee. I mean, they struggled to get past Auburn last week. They only put up 21 points against an Auburn team right now that's in absolute disarray that might be getting rid of their coach. But at the same time, I think the thing that does give me a little bit of pause here, LSU's defense is actually not terrible. They didn't play well against Florida State, and that's true. But they have improved significantly. If you look at what they did against Mississippi State, they were pretty impressive, right? Like, pull up the stats from LSU Miss State. Because Miss State jumped out to a lead early, but Will Rogers being held to 214 yards passing in a Mike Leach offense is very, very impressive. And, obviously there's a big difference between what Mike Leach does and what Josh Heupel does. But Tennessee's got to come out and execute very, very well on offense to score consistently, like we've gotten used to seeing them play. And it's not like this offense has been perfect. They were close to perfect against Florida, but we got to remember back to that Pittsburgh game where they didn't play well in the second half. So, and we probably won't have Cedric Tillman again. I seriously doubt it. You don't want to rush him back yet. He literally just had surgery last week. That does kind of concern me. And as you said, we're going down to Death Valley. Even with the early kickoff, it's going to be loud down there. Those fans know how big of an opportunity this is to get a top 10 win. And, I do worry too that the bit of the outside noise is, oh man, we got Alabama coming in next week. We could have a top 10 third Saturday in October showdown, an undefeated third Saturday in October showdown. But it should not be understated. And just as a Tennessee fans, alum, LSU has provided some of the most heartbreaking losses of my fandom. I mean, 2006, we had, I think it was a 3-4 point lead. And then I think it was Jamarcus Russell throws a touchdown pass right at the end to win the game for LSU, like 9 seconds left in the game. 2007, we have a lead in the second half of the SEC title game against LSU. And LSU comes back and they win the game. They go on to win the national championship. 2010, we had won the game, but it turns out we hadn't because we had 13 men on the field, and then we lose the game on the very last play. Yeah, even like if you think about the downfall of Tennessee football, 2001, a week after going into the swamp and pulling off one of the greatest victories in school history. I mean, just behind the national championship, the 2001 game at Florida in early December. Then they go next week and lose to a backup quarterback from LSU. LSU has been a thorn in the side of Tennessee for the past 20 years. They provided some of the most backbreaking losses in school history that, frankly, if you think about 2001, that was the last time Tennessee was truly a national title contender. 2006, they were top 10 at that point, but they kind of the train went off the tracks when they lost that game, and they didn't end up finishing in the top 25 that season. You have 2007, the last time they were in the SEC title game. And even Gary Johnson has said in a game before, that loss to LSU was the last time that Tennessee really was a championship caliber team. And it really feels like the Dooley era kind of fell apart after the 13-man debacle.
Yeah, LSU is definitely a team that,
Exactly.
and even the last time they played was just humiliating. It was on one of the worst rains, one of the worst storms I've ever seen. Do you remember how
Okay,
bad?
I remember. I was a freshman. I was a freshman in the band playing during that. It was absolutely, it was insane. Like trying to play Rocky Top in the driving monsoon. Oh my God, I felt like I was drowning trying to play.
I
I had
remember.
a giant sousaphone, and literally for days afterwards, we were having to rotate our horns to get water out. It was raining so hard.
Yeah, I remember that. And it was not the end of Bud Jones' era because they got rid of him before, but it probably would have solidified the end of his era. I remember it was already the backup quarterback and was the kind of the and Ed Orgeron was coaching LSU on that game and was on the same season that LSU lost to Troy. So that was a win that kind of gave some peace to Ed Orgeron.
If you want to think about how far both of these programs have come, right? So the starting quarterbacks in this game, you had Jarek Garantano as a freshman, a true freshman. He was 13 of 23 that night, 239, a one score. And then you had Danny Etling. They were 11 of 15 for 81 yards that night passing. This is 2 years before Joe Burrow would come in and throw 60 touchdown passes. They went from they threw for 81 yards that night. I mean, that is just insane to think about.
Of course, the rain contributed a lot to probably was more like a run game than a throw game, but still, how far those programs have come. Of course, I think LSU being ranked number 25. I mean, they deserve to be there, especially they won their last 4 games after losing on their opening versus Florida State. But I think this game is a bigger game for Brian Kelly than, as I said before. I think Brian Kelly needs this win more than Josh Heupel. I think if Tennessee loses, of course, will be kind of disappointing because Tennessee will definitely fell in the ranks. It will be won't be a top 10 matchup versus Alabama. But still, I feel like it's gonna. But I still take Tennessee. I think Tennessee is gonna win by 3 points.
Yeah, I think I said this in the Rock Solid Sports comments section the other day. My poor prediction here is 30-27. I think obviously Hendon Hooker, if he can go down there and have another big day, that will only further put him up in that Heisman conversation. But still, I think when it comes to that, you got to win all the rest of these games and then find a way to upset Alabama or Georgia. I think for him to truly be in the Heisman conversation, and if you do that, go 11-1, you're in the playoff conversation. So, but you can't start thinking about that if you don't win games like this. You have to win a game like this to catapult yourself into that conversation. Because here's the thing: I think if they could be LSU and Kentucky, let's say you lose Georgia, Bama, you beat LSU, Kentucky, and then beat everyone else. That puts you at 10-2, and then that really puts you in a position to win to go to a New Year's Six bowl at the bare minimum. And if I want to upset Georgia or Alabama, that puts you in a position to maybe be a playoff team. But as I said, our defense will have to improve a lot for that to truly happen. But Hendon Hooker, I feel like the way he's playing right now, and if he can continue to play like that and he can stay healthy, that will give us any chance in any game. Because I I've kind of parlaying this off into the rest of the SEC. I think the story of last week was Georgia. Georgia barely escaping Missouri, which was a really stunning result because Missouri has not looked good at all this year. But Missouri came out and was the better team in the first half. Like they were pushing around Georgia on both lines of scrimmage. And really, it felt like in the second half, Missouri lost creativity on offense. They got stagnant, and it allowed Georgia to kind of wear them down throughout the game. And Georgia kind of just bulldozed their way to that win. But Stetson Bennett by far played his worst game of the season. And if they hadn't forced Missouri to multiple field goals early, they could have lost that game. And for Georgia fans, you have to be concerned. I mean, not necessarily this week. They should be Auburn this week. But you can't play like that against, Tennessee and Mississippi State, Kentucky, Florida, and not expect to, drop one of those. Because Georgia should still be the favorite in the East. But I don't know if it's as foregone conclusion as it was 2 weeks ago.
And they deserve to fall on the ranks. Alabama is the number one right now. It was totally fair. And but I feel like Stetson Bennett always had some doubts. He's still not a unanimous quarterback in Athens. I feel like the fans, of course, he will always.
I think right now he is. For this season he is, but you're right. Up until this point, no. I think he kind of went towards the back half of last year, and he came out and was playing great. But the thing with Stetson Bennett, he rarely throws the ball down the field. He throws it down the field some, but most of his throws are behind the line of scrimmage or within 5 yards. He's not a downfield pocket passer. He's not an NFL prospect. And these people are trying to say, oh, he's like the next Drew Brees or whatever. No. Drew Brees could throw the ball down the field. Stetson Bennett, I don't think can do that on a consistent basis.
Stetson Bennett is a great system quarterback. I feel like he maybe can work under Bill Belichick's Patriots, maybe, but under the Georgia's offense, he works great. I feel like he's a system quarterback.
Yeah, well, I regret to inform you that Matt Ryan has thrown yet another interception on the early season. Yeah, well, it's 6-0 right now, Broncos. So they just took the ball back, but yeah, it's not looking good for the Colts. But I think you're completely right. Stetson Bennett definitely fires because of the talent around him. And he also has Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers is probably the single best player in all of college football. Him or like Bryce Young. And speaking of Bryce Young, he may be out on Saturday, which will allow Jalen Milrose, the backup quarterback for Alabama, to play against Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M got absolutely murdered on Saturday by Mississippi State, 41-17. And you got to wonder, is the Heat going to start rising on Jimbo Fisher? I mean, granted, he's getting paid so much money. His buyout is ridiculous. But for a team that just had the number one recruiting class decide to start a beef with the most successful coach in all of college football this offseason. Coming out and laying eggs to Appalachian State and Mississippi State, but even before you play Alabama, is not the best look. for the Texas A&M Aggies. And now they're 23-point underdogs heading into Tuscaloosa Saturday. And most people, I think, are expecting them to get ran out of the stadium. And I know they pulled off the upset last year, but that was at home in Kyle Field. I think Bryant Denny Stadium on Saturday night is gonna be a bloodbath, even with Jalen Milrose.
Probably CBS is the most like hurt, like the most affected by this downfall of Texas A&M because they wish to promote this game as like a top 15 or even a top 10 battle between two coaches who had a beef over the off season. But now they can't do that. They can now they're gonna promote as like the big battle between two great coaches, but they cannot promote at this biggest game because one is the number one team in the country and the other had losses to Mississippi State and Appalachian State. So it's going to be a hard time for CBS. I know it's a night game for CBS, which is their prime time, but it's going to be hard to promote.
Imagine if they had waited to say their night game for next week in Knoxville. Could you imagine
Yeah,
that? A sold out Neyland Stadium at night against Bama? Oh man. But yeah, but we're not going to get that though. Unfortunately, we'll settle for the standard free 30. But I'm not even going to talk about Tennessee Bama yet. I'm worried about LSU. But yeah, I think even with Jalen Milrose, Bama's going to win. A&M's their offense, it's unacceptable with all the talent that they have. You have a guy like Devin Achane. And it was crazy, Devin Achane. He's going to be a steal for someone in the draft next year because his stock is falling for no fault of his own. They have so much talent on that roster that it's mind-boggling that they cannot find a better offense to run, that they cannot produce more on offense. And at a certain point, Jimbo Fisher is either going to have to change his offense to fit the talent that he does have, or it's just going to be a failure. And for Texas A&M, when you look at the resources that they have, and you think about it for A&M with Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC, this is as good as it's going to get right now. You have to strike now if you're the Aggies, because when the Longhorns and when the Sooners show up, and I know both of them are not very good this year, I understand that, but when they show up, it's going to get really difficult for the Aggies really fast because you're stuck in between them, Arkansas, LSU, and you're going to be fighting for every recruiting battle for every football game. So A&M squandering this opportunity right now is really concerning. If I were an A&M fan.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like the goal for Texas A&M is to make it a competitive game as Texas did.
Right. I mean, they won it last year, right? So, like, could you do it again? I just don't see it. I mean, CBS this weekend has to be kicking themselves in the foot. I mean, I don't know why they chose Auburn, Georgia, as their
I mean,
second game. I mean, that.
they of course they were expecting both Auburn and Texas A&M to be in better spots because if you think about it, if both of those teams had one loss, they would definitely be ranked. Especially they were hoping for an undefeated Texas A&M at this point to be on a top 10 matchup and maybe Auburn one loss team to be like on a top 25 or like top 20. But definitely
Right.
Auburn. Go ahead.
All right. I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, go ahead and finish.
No, and I was gonna say, like, of course, CBS can't control what happens on the field. The games they chose were supposed to be like prime time, especially if Auburn and Texas A&M helped. But they're still like really good games. I feel like Auburn always gave the heat to Georgia. I remember, I think like it was like 2017 where Auburn had a really great game and defeated Georgia.
Yes, that was the last time they've beaten Georgia. Auburn, if you really think about it, they have not beaten Georgia that much. They've beaten Alabama more in the last 20 years than they've beaten Georgia. I think they've only beaten Georgia like 4 times since 2000. Like it's a
Yeah,
crazy stat like that. Because everyone
yeah.
thinks about Auburn, Alabama, but people I think forget about the Auburn Georgia rivalry because those two schools are very, very close. Only like 2 hours apart or something like that.
No, and all Auburn is like I consider Auburn like what Texas A&M is to Alabama. That's why CBS picked both of those games. It's like there's it's Alabama's and Georgia's second biggest rival is Auburn and Texas A&M, and they always give trouble. Like as I mentioned, when Georgia was, I feel like was on the top four at that point, was like or number one or number two at that point, they lost badly to Auburn, and last year Texas A&M gave an upset to Alabama, so it makes sense. Those are on CBS, especially all Alabama Texas A&M on night game. Before the season started, every thought that was a no-brainer. That was obvious because all the off-season beef between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban.
Oh, yeah, that's very, very true. I think for Jimbo Fisher, there's so much on the line for him. If this team doesn't come out and at least be competitive in this game, it could start spiraling out of control for them this year. Because you think about that's already at 3 losses for them. That'd be 3-3. And you think about who else they have to play, right? They got to play Ole Miss still. They got to play. I think who else have to play? They got to play LSU. They've got several difficult games after this that could go against them.
Yeah, they still have. I feel like and we
Florida,
discussed that.
Florida.
And we discussed that on, I think, not I don't know if it was the last episode or the one before that. They should be kind of worried. They have to make a bowl season. They have to make a bowl season. If they don't, Jimbo
Right.
Fisher's going to get fired. But
And we weren't anticipating having that conversation about Texas A&M before the season at all. We were thinking about, could they make the playoffs? Could they win the SEC West? Now we're talking about, are they going to get to 6 wins? Like, if I read your schedule right now, so they're 3-2 right now. All right. Alabama, win or loss. I'm saying loss.
I'm saying loss.
All right, so we're both 3-3 at South Carolina. I'm gonna say win but close.
Win but close. I was gonna say literally that win, but it's gonna be like for like a touchdown or even a field goal.
4-3. Ole Miss at home. I think that's a loss.
I think that's a loss. It's gonna be competitive. It's gonna be close, but I think that's a loss.
Florida at home. I think it's a loss.
I think that's a win.
I'm going loss. I think Anthony Richardson, that could be one of those games where he goes in and balls out and finds a way to get Florida a win there. So you have him at 5-4. I have him at 4-5 at Auburn. I'm going for win.
I think I'm gonna go with the lose. I think Auburn.
Really?
So that makes 5-5 for both of those.
And then we get UMass. So I'm going with a win there. I mean, UMass is one of the worst teams in FBS.
Yeah, they're in the basement of even SEC shorts. I always watch that sketch. It's so funny. Like UMass is the school of the basement of FBS.
All right. Did you see the one last week where like they had Tennessee go back to the top 10 meeting room?
Yeah,
that was amazing. That was
hilarious. And like and the background, the sound of the helicopter and the way it's like Tennessee like balls because it's like oh my god, we haven't been there for so long.
Yeah, we had to use our MapQuest directions. That was great. So that gives them to 6. Okay, maybe they're not in danger, but then LSU. Right now, I'd pick them to lose to LSU. I have them at 6-6 right now.
I mean, the way the season is shaping, it's gonna be a defining moment for both of those coaches. It's like, it can affect Brian Kelly moving forward, and it definitely can affect Jimbo Fisher moving forward. I think it's a vital game for both coaches.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, think about LSU moving forward. Of course, they have us right now. Then they got to go to Florida. They have Ole Miss. They got Bama, Arkansas. I mean, the UAB, which is not an easy G5 team. Then you have at A&M. Like LSU does not have an easy game left anywhere in the schedule. Like Brian Kelly has his workout cut out for him starting this week against Tennessee. I'm trying to think what else to bring up. We talked about Georgia, A&M.
Kentucky. Do you remember that we drove a path of Kentucky possibility of fighting for and a playoff.
Well, that blew up. That blew
That
up.
blew up. That blew up. We're
Yeah.
too optimistic. You know, Ole
Yeah,
Miss
I
came out
told you
of the
that wasn't gonna happen, but I tried to tell you that was not gonna happen. I mean, like, I entertained the possibility,
yeah. I
but
mean, we
Kentucky,
entertained the
Will
possibility.
Levis is not a top 10 pick. I need to understand these draft analysts when they say Will Levis is a top 10 pick. I don't see it. I do not see it at all.
He's probably he's like one of those quarterbacks that kind of people hyped up. Like he's probably the next Mitch Trubisky, where nobody saw as like a really this great quarterback coming out of North Carolina. He was pick number 2. Probably this could be it, like the next Mitchell Trubisky.
Right. I could definitely see it. I'm going to the Tennessee Kentucky game in a few weeks, so I'm gonna get to see Will Levis, assuming he is still playing by then, not hurt. Get to see him play. I'll be very curious to see what he looks like in person, because it's one thing to see a guy on TV, but it's another thing to see them in person. So I'm very interested to see what Will Levis looks
Eh,
like. I think one team I wanted to bring up that's not they're okay. Well, they're gonna be SEC, but they're not right now. Oklahoma. Oh my goodness, getting ran out of the stadium against TCU, and obviously TCU, they're really good. Sonny Dykes is doing a really good job over there. They get to be on College Game Day this week against Kansas, the Jayhawks, an undefeated matchup. But meanwhile, think about this: there's a ranked matchup at noon on the second week of October in the Big 12. And it's not Oklahoma, Texas. It's TCU, Kansas. Think about it. The eyes of the nation will not be on the Red River Shootout in Dallas. They'll be in Lawrence, Kansas. I mean, I almost feel like for the Big 12, this has to be the greatest Schadenfreude ever. Because Oklahoma and Texas are like, we're too big for you. We are going to leave you for the SEC. And neither Texas or Oklahoma are ranked right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Like, they says here tickets are $24 for Kansas TCU matchup. If this is true, that's the biggest steal because Memorial Stadium is gonna be rocking. I have my one of my best friends is a KU alum, Italo Costa. He says that he has a couple of friends that are like thinking about camping, for the game day or even to watch because they used to do that for basketball, but for football, probably the last time they felt like this kind of a hyped was 2007. So it has been like what 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, since 2007, of course, they were 11-1 that year. Were 2 games away from playing a national title. If they had beaten Missouri, they would have had to go play Oklahoma. If they found a way to win that game, they would have gone to the national title game. They had Todd Reesing, they had Aqib Talib on that team, amongst others. But yeah, I feel like I think the magic might come to an end though this week. I mean, I didn't think Kansas played great last week. The Iowa State really had a questionable game plan. Like for some reason, they were running like 2 yards a carry, but they never tried to force the pass. And it wasn't like a weather thing. They didn't want to pass. Matt, is there any coach in the country that's had his shine taken off more than Matt Campbell? Matt Campbell could have had any job he wanted after 2020. And now I think he's kind of stuck at Iowa State. Like he can't go and get a big job now. He should have gone when he had the chance, but maybe he realizes that he doesn't want the pressure of like an Auburn. That he wants to stay put at a place like Iowa State where you don't have to win a national title every year to satisfy the fans.
Oh yeah, that's true. And the thing is, it's like it's interesting how the Big 12 shaped because everybody thought after Texas came very close to beat Oklahoma and came very close to defeat Alabama, and Oklahoma was doing fine. They were on the top 10 without their former coach, but both schools fell apart, and TCU and Kansas carrying the Big 12 makes all the commissioner, all the Big 12, front office very happy because, like, hey, those are our teams. They're gonna keep with us, and they're better than the teams are leaving.
Yeah, I think by far the best team in the conference though is Oklahoma State. Like what they did to Baylor the other day was really impressive. Like they went down to Waco and dominated. And I think they are clearly the best team over Kansas State, over Kansas. They'll certainly get their challenges, but Oklahoma, I think this might be the team for Mike Gundy to finally get into the playoffs. Because you think about it, Mike Gundy has been close numerous times with numerous teams, but they always seem to come up short. I feel like this might be the time for Oklahoma State. I would not be surprised if they're one of the Final Four teams at the end of the year. And, if they get there, they could make a little bit of noise. They could give someone a run. So I think Oklahoma State might be right there with like Michigan as like the fourth most impressive team, but Oklahoma State has more impressive wins than what Michigan has.
Oh yeah, I think Michigan is gonna keep in the top four, especially they play Indiana. I think they should take care of business even though they're playing on the road. But Michigan State, I think they're gonna give a hard time for Ohio State. It's not gonna be an easy game for Ryan
No,
Day's
no.
team.
I think Ohio State wins that comfortably. Michigan State has some serious problems, especially in the secondary. Um, they're not that good. You could be right. I mean, anything can happen in college football. We've seen some crazy stuff happen, but Ohio State, after kind of not playing well in week one, they are playing way better the past couple of weeks. They're looking like the team that people thought they were going to be preseason. I think Ohio State wins comfortably in East Lansing.
Before we before I move to the NFL, I want to have my upset pick, which is going to be Florida State at NC State. I think that's going to be my upset of the week.
I could see that. Florida State, they didn't play well last week. But I think for NC State, I think they lost the game that they really, really wanted to win, right? Like they wanted to go on the road and beat Clemson. And they just weren't able to do that. In terms of an upset pick, if I'm looking through well, first and foremost, I'll say this. Notre Dame should not be a favorite over BYU. I don't know why they are. BYU is by far a better team this year than Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I mean, if you think about it, like they barely escaped California. They scored 45 points against North Carolina, but anyone can score in North Carolina. Your local Pee Wee football team can score 45 on North Carolina. I think BYU wins by at least 2+ touchdowns against Oklahoma State, or what I could say against Notre Dame.
And
In
it's
terms,
just interesting.
go ahead.
It's just interesting that a Catholic school and a Mormon school are playing this game in Las Vegas. I just say that.
Yep. All right. I'll tell you two games that I could see some mischief happening. This might sound kind of crazy, especially some of the previous statements I've made about this team. Ole Miss at Vanderbilt. Now, I don't think Vanderbilt's going to win this game, but I just have a feeling, because I think Vanderbilt is an improved team this year. They've proven that they have played a lot better, more consistently. Vanderbilt had the week off last week. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. Ole Miss had an emotional game last week. I don't think Ole Miss's passing game is great. I wish like Ole Miss to win here, but don't be surprised if Vanderbilt has this thing close in the second half. I think Vanderbilt is getting to the point where they could stay with a good team for maybe a half or so. And, I don't be surprised if you look at the Ole Miss Vanderbilt score on Saturday afternoon, like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. Also, for Saturday nightcap, don't be surprised if Washington State, is close with or pulls out the upset of USC. I think USC, they've played kind of sloppy last week against Arizona State. I don't think they've really faced a true. I mean, I know they barely escaped Oregon State. Washington State, I think, is one of those. It's one of those games that could be an absolute trap game if you're not careful. So don't be surprised if the Cougars are giving USC a run for their money on Saturday night.
Yeah, because and even before the Arizona State game, they came up really close to lose to Oregon State. So Lincoln Riley, I know he's still trying to find his defense because the offense is playing great, but the defense, that's the Achilles heel.
Right, and USC as well. Next week they have a huge game at Utah. So, do they get caught looking ahead to next week?
Yeah,
That certainly
that's
could
true.
be a problem.
Yeah, it's like the same problem with Tennessee. It's like, and they're playing at home.
Right. So, of course, obviously USC Utah is not a robbery game like Alabama Tennessee is. Just looking ahead to next week. Like, look at some of the games here. We have potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top 25 matchups. Next week, we could have Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State, Michigan, USC, Utah, Oklahoma State, TCU, NC State, and Syracuse, Mississippi State, and Kentucky. And not to mention, we have LSU, Florida, Clemson, Florida State, Arkansas, BYU, Kansas at Oklahoma.
Wow. So many
Next
good.
week looks incredible for college football.
I mean, it's just that time of the year where you have so many great sports, so many good games in all sports. Yeah, but it's just I feel like it's gonna be a great week of college football. But moving on to from Saturday to Sunday, again, Nick, I got 10-8 in our week 4 picks, and again, I think our strategy for the Titans is working.
Right, right. I know I probably should stick to it, but I don't know if I'm going to stick to it this week, though. I mean, they're
Yeah.
they're playing the Washington Commanders. Um, yeah. But anyway, let's go down the list, Gus. I guess we're going to start off with the game that's going on right now. Broncos 6, Colts nothing, but the Colts are driving. They're in getting deep into Broncos territory, so maybe the Colts can at least get a field goal here, or maybe take the lead right before halftime. So, I mean, could be a 50-50. Who do you think pulls us out in Denver between the Colts and the Broncos?
I think it's gonna be the Colts.
Ooh, I, I, don't know, I feel like the Broncos, their defense is stronger right now, and I don't trust Frank Wright. I think Frank Wright's coaching decisions right now are not making a lick of sense. You think I look at Indianapolis fans; they are ready to fire Frank Wright. They fire him into the sun. I like the Broncos to find a way to pull this thing off.
Ooh, Packers at Giants. I feel like
In London
we,
too, 9:30 a.m. kick.
yeah. So neutral side, I think the Packers should take care of business.
I agree, Packers. But then again, the Packers, remember, they did struggle against the third string quarterback Bailey Zappi, and on Sunday had to go to overtime to beat him. So Green Bay is not what they used to be, but I think they're better than the Giants.
Yeah, it's like Green Bay. It's like I compare like Green Bay with this like college football team that has a really easy schedule on their first 7 games. Like they got 3 non-con easy, and then 4 conference games with like Vanderbilt and you know Missouri, and they're walking through. But then after the second half is going to be tougher,
Right.
and then we'll see what this Packer team can do, especially because they don't have a go-to wide receiver after Devontae Adams left.
Nah, I mean they tried to develop Alan Lazar into one, but that's not working. Randall Cobb is playing pretty well. They're really having to rely on their running backs, on Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, and it's kind of unusual for the Packers to have to rely so much on the running back position, but it's
Eh,
kind of what they have to do right now to succeed.
Yeah, I mean there are rumors that Odell Beckham Jr. might be joining the Packers.
That I don't think that'd be a horrible idea. I mean, they need some. They need whatever they can take in that wide receiver room. I mean, okay, well, maybe not Antonio Brown. Maybe you don't need that. I mean, Aaron
Yeah,
Rodgers has
yeah.
enough controversies around. Can you imagine Antonio Brown and Aaron Rodgers in the same team? The ego the amount of ego in that locker room.
Uh, it's like imagine it's like maybe it would be like if Aaron Rodgers throws to Antonio Brown, he didn't catch. Then a second time he goes to another player. Then the third time, Antonio Brown will throw a fit.
Oh yeah, he's gonna take off he's gonna take off everything this time and wave to
And
the
then
crowd like he did in New York.
and then after the game, Aaron Rodgers is gonna throw Antonio Brown under the bus for the media.
Yeah, he's gonna give him a lace bottle of ayahuasca.
Yeah.
So yeah. Of course, and again, it might cause Antonio Brown to visit some more pools if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Oh my. But I think, as we both said, I think Packers should take care of business in London. But Steelers at Bills, I got the Steelers. I mean, even though they lost to the Jets, they're the kind of team
What?
that have trouble playing weaker teams that but grows when they play bigger teams. So I
So you
got the
think
Steelers.
Kenny Pickett in his first start is going on the road and defeating Josh Allen in Buffalo?
Yes, I got the Steelers.
Wow, that I mean, because Buffalo here is a 14-point favorite, which is the largest spread I've seen all year, at least so far. I mean, the Bills, they definitely don't look invincible like they did early on. You know, they lost to the Dolphins 2 weeks ago. They had a rally to defeat the Ravens last week. But I just think that the Bills here, they're just a better team. I think Josh Allen is going to have another big day. Give me Buffalo.
Yeah, but don't count the Steelers out. I just say that. Don't count the Steelers out. Next up is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Cleveland Brown. I remember when I picked the Falcons to beat the Browns, and you're like, a little, not, thinking that I was a little bit over the head, but the Falcons, they got a really good win.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: the Falcons have been pleasantly surprising. I thought they'd be the worst team in the league, and that has not come to fruition. And shame on me for doubting Marcus Mariota. But then again, he didn't play great in that game. But still, I mean, he's finding ways to win, and that's all that matters. And clearly, I think for the Browns, Jacoby Brissett's holding them back. We're not going to see the full potential of this team until we see Deshaun Watson, get to play. So. But that's not going to be until the end of this season. I like the Chargers here to win. I think here's the thing with the Chargers. They get out to a huge lead in Houston. Houston starts storming back, but we saw them band together and find a way to pull back away from Houston. And that's not something we have seen the Los Angeles Chargers do a lot of over time.
I got the Chargers too. I don't trust this Browns team, and I agree with you. We're only going to see them full potential after week 12 when Deshaun Watson finally makes his debut. He better be ready, though. He had time. Now he has time to prepare, to focus. He better be ready by week 12.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or otherwise, people are really – because he's going to be getting a lot of crap anyway, and probably deservedly so, especially if all the allegations are true. But, I mean, for the football side of things, he's going to have to come out and perform. All right, what's up next?
The Chicago Bears win a division matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings. I think, the Vikings got a really good win in London versus I think I got the Vikings.
Yeah, the Vikings, they're going to win a lot of these close games against bad teams, I feel like. I think, if you look at Kirk Cousins, what he's historically done, they're not going to be good teams like the Eagles, but they're going to find a way to win a game like this. Give me the Vikings.
I think the Vikings are going to go to the wild card. I think the Vikings can be a viable team for the wild card. They're not going to win.
And partially just because the NFC is weaker as well, so that helps a ton.
So now we got the Detroit Lions versus the New England Patriots. It's crazy to think that both of those teams had the same record, 1-3. In like 4 years ago, that would have been unthinkable.
Yeah, I know. And what's even crazier? I'm going to pick the Lions to go on the road to Foxborough and win. I think I'd be saying that anytime soon.
And we compare 4 years ago, I want to even pick who were the Detroit Lions quarterback in 2018.
Well, Matthew Stafford.
Matthew Stafford, that's true. So in terms of matchup quarterbacks, maybe Brady was better, not by close.
Well, but
But now,
the thing with the Lions, their quarterback was never the issue. It was the defense. It was running back. And you're now, if you look at the Lions, their offense is incredible. They have the best offense in the league, but their defense is absolutely horrible. They've given up the most points through 4 games out of any team, but they've also
but
scored as many points as basically any team in history for 4 games as well.
but it's funny to think about it. I was like, compare. Oh, 4 years ago, it was like 4 years ago the Lions got the W versus the same Patriots, and both were 1-2 at that point. Of course, then the season changed, and the Patriots found a way to win the Super Bowl. But I feel like I also take the Lions.
Yeah, they're going both with Detroit. Wow. Okay, it'll be very interesting to see what New England. I feel like New England's season's going to kind of fall apart without Mac Jones for a while. I think that
Do,
Bailey
do you,
Zappi, he played well.
no, yeah, but do you think when Robert Kraft's patience are gonna run out with Bill Belichick? Because it's so
Ooh,
crazy
that's a good
that
question.
because it's crazy. Like everybody thought Belichick was gonna leave first than Brady because remember 2018, Belichick wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to be the future quarterback for the Patriots. He was forced by Kraft, after he took Brady's side to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Brady left, and then uh, uh, and then Belichick stayed. Last year they made the playoffs, but if they go like uh, 5-8 or even 4-9, do you think Robert Kraft is going to be like, okay, I'm done. Like it's time for you to retire or leave?
I mean, it's NFL. Results are results, and clearly Bill Belichick, ever since Brady has left, you missed the playoffs the first year without him. You make it to the wild card last year, where you get smoked in the first game, and this year it looks like you're on your way to maybe not making the playoffs at all again. And at a certain point, if you think about Belichick without Brady, he's about a 500 coach without Tom Brady. So, he's getting up there in age. You got to start thinking about, okay, what's life going to look like after Bill Belichick? He's not going to be there forever. And, at this point, the whole Brady or Belichick, who's more responsible for their success, I think at this point, Tom Brady. I think that has to be your answer for the success
Because
in New England.
yeah, because everybody thought, okay, first season without Tom Brady, it was COVID season. There were a lot of players opting out, and okay, let's give it a credit. He even got Ken Newton as his starting quarterback. Year two, they were like, okay, they made the playoffs. He found Mac Jones, but now if year three and is still playing this bad, is just gonna show how valuable Brady was.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you've seen it. You've seen what he's done for Tampa, and you've seen how New England has fallen off. So,
Yeah.
um, by the way, score update for halftime: the Indianapolis did score a field goal, so it's 6-3 Denver.
Yeah. Let's go,
They're in the
Coach.
Mile High City.
Let's go, Colts. I got them my pick. Next up is Russell Wilson less Seahawks versus New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees less. I mean, if there was like 3 years ago, would have been a great matchup. But now is Geno Smith versus like
Andy
James
Dalton.
Winston, Andy
That's
Dalton,
Andy Dalton. Yeah.
Andy Dalton versus Geno Smith.
But you got to give Geno Smith credit. He's balling. Like he looked great last week in Detroit. He's not done poorly. Um, Give me the Seahawks. I think Seattle's actually not playing half bad. I think Pete Carroll is getting the most out of what he has right now, and you got to commend him for that. So I'm going to go Seattle. They'll have a winning record after 5 weeks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I got Seahawks too. I feel like, and also it's funny. We talk about Brady, Belichick, post breakup. We also have to compare who's going to do better, Russell Wilson or Pete Carroll.
Yeah, that is a great comparison so far. If you look at Russell Wilson tonight, 9 of 17, 69 passing yards, 23 rushing yards. That's not good. Not good at all. Has not looked good really at all since he moved over to Denver. Meanwhile, Seattle, they have been pretty competitive given what they have.
Yeah, both teams. No, I know the Broncos are leading at halftime, but the game's not over yet. But both teams are 2-2, and it's like one is falling apart. Of course, a lot of blame on Nathaniel Hackett, and we're gonna get to the Broncos pick as they play. I mean, we talk about the Broncos. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett's all out heat, but you know the way Geno Smith is balling, he's just showed that Pete Carroll can run the offense with a different type of quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, Pete Carroll, there's a reason why if you look back to what he was at college. I mean, Pete Carroll's practically the only coach who's been able to have success at both college and the NFL, at least in recent memory, because what he did at USC with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and what he's done at Seattle. Because historically, you have like the Jimmy Johnsons, the Barry Switzers that were able to do both with Oklahoma and Dallas. But think about it. Urban Meyer tried to come to NFL, didn't work. Nick Saban tried to do NFL, didn't work. Not everyone does well in both leagues, and Pete Carroll has, and it just shows how great of a football coach he is. And I feel like Pete Carroll does get kind of disrespected in terms of conversations for modern best coaches.
Oh, you forgot Lane Kiffin.
Oh, yeah, Lane Kiffin, that didn't work. That's right. So most of these coaches don't work, and people talking about like, should Lincoln Riley take a shot at the NFL? I don't think he should. I don't know which one of these current Matt Rule. I mean, Matt Rule, amazing at Baylor. He might get fired this year at Carolina. Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, he's been better in NFL, but he might get fired. And he wasn't that great in college.
I mean, the only team I see Lincoln Riley going is Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones is a OU alum. I think the only team that Lincoln Riley will go to the NFL is Dallas.
Honestly, I think if he were to go to any team right now with the personnel they have, Arizona. And solely because he's worked with Kyler Murray. He knows how to get the most out of Kyler Murray. He coached him in college. And I think that would be a very interesting pairing if they got back together in Arizona. But I don't see Lincoln Riley leaving the $100 million he's getting to be the coach in Los Angeles. And, he's already in a pro town. And USC is the closest you can get to pro football in college football. In terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the expectations, it's not Knoxville, it's not Tuscaloosa, it's Los Angeles, right? I mean, it's like, what you get in Miami to an extent, but, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum is a much cooler venue to play in than, Hard Rock Stadium.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But, yeah, but just sum up, we both picked the Seahawks. I think it's going to be an interesting game, but, I think Seattle can take care of business. But next is my New York Jets, who I picked to win last week, even though you doubt me. You picked the Steelers, and you were like, "Are you crazy? Pick the Jets." They got the win, and they're gonna face the Dolphins with And let's get into it. The whole Tua Tagovailoa controversy. I think his doctor got fired.
Oh yeah, he did, and it's just definitely you want to see the NFL be more cautious in situations like this moving forward. These guys, they're people first. Their futures are too important. You don't want to see, more and more cases CTE come up, and it was obvious in the Bills game that Tua was not right. So it's just a very unfortunate situation, and the hit that he took is, this happened live last week during our last show when because remember we were reacting to it live as it happened, and I don't know if we're going to see Tua again the rest of the season. So the Dolphins, they've had a lot of distractions because of this. Teddy Bridgewater's just an okay quarterback. This might stun you, Gus, but I'm taking the Jets. I'm taking the Jets. I think they're playing better than I thought they would. Zach Wilson looks better than I thought he would. Give me the Jets.
Yeah, I think the Jets can fight for a wild card. They're 2-2. Like they're two. They're what if they win, they're gonna be 3-2 like the Dolphins. And I don't know. I mean, it will be like it's like I think like third year for Robert Sala, and he showed signs of progress. So we both picked the Jets to win. Now a divisional game in the NFC South between the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and who would have thought both teams are 2-2?
Right, and the Buccaneers are 0-2 on home. So can they get their first win here? I'm going to say they do. I know like Brady's been going through a lot off the field as we've been talking about. I know it's just been just crazy recently in Tampa as it's been. And the Falcons are playing a lot better than I thought they would. But even with all those factors, you're probably going to have Chris Godwin back this week. It seems like the type of game where a Brady-led team would get right, and this was a get right game for the Bucks to get to 3-2.
Well, I got the Bucks, so it's gonna be close, but it's gonna be, I think,
I could
close.
see that. I wanted the spread here is 9.5. I might be tempted to take Atlanta plus 9.5 to cover.
Yeah, I'll
Maybe.
take that. I'll take that. That's a good bet. I'll take that bet. Next up is the Tennessee Titans going to Washington D.C. or metro area to play the Commanders. I got the Titans. I'm gonna keep my luck.
Yeah, this may be stupid, but I'm going to join you. I'm going with the Titans. I'm picking them for the first time since like week 1, I think. So I think if you look at the Washington Commanders, the offensive line is an absolute shambles right now. Carson Wentz is probably the worst starting quarterback in the league. But yeah, the Titans have no second half offense. Think about this. I don't know when the last time this happened, but they literally have won 2 straight games without scoring a single point in the second half in either game. I want to know when was the last time that happened. I haven't seen a stat on that, but it feels like that's extremely, extremely rare in the modern game for that to happen. But hey, if the Titans win here, they go to 3-2. That for as bad as the start of the season was, getting upset with the Giants, again annihilated by Buffalo. I think that's a pretty decent recovery. I mean, obviously they went up on the road, beat Indianapolis in Indy. Winning up there is always good, right? I mean, there's been many times we've gone up to the Lucas Oil Dome and it hasn't worked out for us. So, definitely a good one for the Titans. I think Derrick Henry's starting to find himself. We just got to find a way to get some second half offense. If we could just find some second half offense, we'll be fine. We will be fine. Like this is a team that if they can get themselves find their identity, they'll win the division. But they just got to find a way to be consistent on offense, and whether it's personnel or coaching. And I think it's a bit of both, right? Because I'm still not on the Todd, still not a Todd Downing fan. I still think we should find a different OC. And obviously, I'm not a huge believer in Ryan Tannehill. I do think that. The Titans at the very least will be good enough to win this game.
Yeah, I agree too. I think and the Commanders are going to be the bottom of the division. It's just sad to see Carson Wentz be, as you called it, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. He had so much promise. He was the starting quarterback in the first half of the season when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. I know. Then he got injured, and Nick Foles carried the rest. But still, there's a lot of promise, and now it seems that he can't find his talent again. He went to Colts, didn't work. Now he's in the Commanders, not working. So, is that he? Do you think he's gonna be in the future in the same path as Teddy Bridgewater or Mitch Trubisky? A very good backup quarterback.
I could see that. I could see that being Carson Wentz's future because I think after this year, his time as a main starter is going to be done. I think he's going to turn into a journeyman transition QB.
Yeah. So next game is another divisional round. The Houston Texans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, which leads the division. And I gotta say they're gonna keep on the lead because I got them over Texans.
I agree. The Texans, they're probably going to end up being the worst team in the league, and they'll win either the CJ Stroud or Bryce Young sweepstakes. Meanwhile, the Jaguars they're out playing themselves, so I like the Jags here.
Ooh, really good matchup. 49ers and Panthers, the 49ers, I mean, 2-2. Everybody thought they're going to be better now with Jimmy G as a starter. They got a really close. And I mean, really, Kyle Shanahan is Sean McVay kryptonite. 7-0 in regular season.
Yeah, I mean, what it is with that matchup is just the 49ers just seem to always out scheme the Rams. And really, the thing with the Rams, and we're going to get into that next game when they host the Cowboys. Um, it seems like their whole offense this year is throwing the Cooper Cup. That's the whole offense for the Rams. I feel like last year they had a bit more creativity than that, but they don't have any creativity. And I think it's killing them.
Oh yeah, I agree. I feel like that's the main issue. And it's I think the 49ers, even though they probably gonna, sweep the Rams, I think they're still gonna fight for a wild card. But this game I take the 49ers.
I agree. I'm taking the Niners here as well. Baker Mayfield, after second to Carson Wentz, is just and this is just really sad. I wanted him to do well this year after getting replaced by Deshaun Watson and getting treated terribly in Cleveland. But we're starting to see why they decide to deal with all the controversy with Deshaun Watson because of Baker Mayfield, unfortunately, at this point, is just not that good anymore.
It's like
And
the Browns knew he couldn't be a starter, so they rather deal with controversy than not be a viable team.
yeah, which I mean, it's just crazy. I had to make that choice, but from a football standpoint, it looks like they have made at least a correct choice. Now we haven't seen what Watson's going to look like when he returns, but if he returns with what he used to be like in Houston, then yeah, I mean, it was an obvious no-brainer
Yeah.
from a
So
football standpoint.
so the last game. This one is the 4-0 Eagles, which is the only team with the 4-0. And Jalen Hurd, a lot of people praising on him, say he might be the MVP. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles, they haven't played any legit team. I think Arizona on the road is going to be their hardest game. So that's going to be a challenge for Jalen Hurts, and I take the Cardinals.
Honestly, I'm gonna take the Cardinals as well. We're both going with the upset here. It feels like Kyler Murray, he's been a bit up and down this year. But if I think about what he did at Vegas, there's a lot of magic there, and it feels like this might be the type of game where you see magic. And it feels like the Eagles, when they go to the desert, when they go to Arizona, it feels like they struggle. I don't know. It just seems like the Eagles always struggle in Arizona. Give me the Cardinals there. I think we skipped Cowboys Rams, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we skipped. That's true. I know I was missing a game. So Cowboys and Rams. The Cowboys are 3-1. I did not expect them to be 3-1 after losing Dak Prescott, but I take the Rams.
I I agree. I kind of thought about it, taking the shot with Cooper Rush, but I do trust Los Angeles more with Matthew Stafford. But they gotta find some creativity on defense, on offense. They gotta find a way to get the ball to other playmakers besides Cooper Cup. They gotta find a way. But I think I will take the Rams.
Sunday Night Football: Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson. Bengals and Ravens 2-2. I don't know. The Bengals haven't convinced me. I mean, I don't know if they are or they are not in Super Bowl loss hangover.
Right. But the question with Baltimore is, can they hold on to a lead? If they get up to a double digit lead, can they not blow it? And that's been the problem for Baltimore all year. They can't hold on to leads. So I think in this game, Baltimore gets out to a double digit lead, but Joe Burrow leads another comeback. Cincinnati on the road by like, I don't know, less than a touchdown. It just feels like one of those games where you're gonna have a classic shootout. I think you're gonna have a lot of points here between the Ravens and the Bengals.
I got the Ravens. I think they gonna hold on to a lead. I got the Ravens. Monday Night Football, AFC West showdown between the finally finally got the win. The Raiders 1-3 versus the 3-1 Chiefs.
Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, what else can you say about him? I mean, the one touchdown he had where he was running out to his right and he like literally spun around. He was about sacked like 2 times, and he still dances around and finds the touchdown in the back of the end zone. I mean,
I
he is a man on a different level. The
I got
Raider Josh McDaniels is not a good head coach. Chiefs.
I got the Raiders. I think they're gonna pull
Ooh.
upset. I
I
got
mean,
the
I
Raiders.
could see that. They played a lot better last weekend, and they have. Here's the thing: the Raiders have the pieces to be a playoff team. They do, at least on offense. I think their biggest hangup is Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, he is definitely is not head coach material. He's been tried so many times as a coach. He's a great offensive coordinator, but as a coach, it doesn't seem to work.
Yeah. So that is every single game. We'll see who wins, and we'll see if one of these teams between Colts and the Broncos can score a touchdown. Um, all right. I think at this point, let's head over to the remainder of those Brazilian topics.
Yeah. First, on Saturday, Sao Paulo had a big game. Was a defining game for their season versus Independente del Valle for the Sul-Americana. Uh, for the Sul-Americana final. Everybody thought that was going to be favorite. Was 90% fans of São Paulo in a neutral stadium in Argentina. São Paulo seemed favorite, but then Independente del Valle just like they just destroyed São Paulo. Played so much better, 2-0. São Paulo now in shambles. They're going to be on the rebuilding mode. I thought Rogério Ceni was going to. I don't know if he's still going to continue as a head coach or not, because he said that if he didn't got a title to São Paulo this season, he would leave. Even, not he didn't. He said he's not even wanted to get a buyout. He's gonna leave like no money, and he lost 2 titles this season: the state championship badly, 4-0 versus Palmeiras, and now he lost again in another final game. It just seems that São Paulo cannot perform well in the biggest stage, especially on the road or even a neutral side game, because on Saturday was 90% fans of São Paulo. Only I think Independente Del Valle has had only 1,500 fans. São Paulo had 18,000 fans, and in the Independente Del Valle just destroyed them. Uh, I mean, they got the win today over America Mineiro, and they're still fighting for a Libertadores spot. But even if they got the Libertadores spot, it's still a very unsuccessful season for Sao Paulo. The way they started the season with so much hope, and everybody thought Rogério, and still we are at the almost the end of the season, and no São Paulo fan knows their starting lineup. It's like, oh, that's the starting lineup, that's the best team. No, we because Rogério Ceni had made so many changes over the course of the season that even the coach doesn't have like a starting lineup defined up at this point. So it's just disappointing for Sao Paulo. Palmeiras, another big win this week, 4-0 versus Coritiba. Was expected Palmeiras to destroy, but the headlines of this game was the debut of 16-year-old Hendrick in the professional team of Palmeiras. He was put up in the lineup on he was put in the game on the second half when the game was pretty much defined. He was very emotional. He thought about his grandpa. His dad was in the stands holding a popcorn bag, crying because imagine for a dad seeing a 16-year-old debut in pro soccer.
And that was the kid we talked about before, right?
Yeah,
Like
that was the
that is
kid
a
that
big
we had the
sensation.
highlight
Yeah.
in the yeah. That was the kid we had the highlights in back in January. So I think finally Palmeiras had a good lead, so Hendrick could debut without pressure. And I think Abel Ferreira is doing the right thing, putting him on like those games where it's like the game is pretty much define, like for so he get a taste of it. So he's like, hey, I see potential in this kid, but I want to put him slowly in the roster.
Yeah, I think that's the way you got to handle. Because like 16 years old in a professional sport, it should that would never happen in America, of course, with like the NCAA and all these different sports. I mean, even like in NASCAR, you got to be 18 to get a license there. And it's just you're never going to see a 16-year-old play professionally in any sport in the U.S. So a 6-year-old going, I mean, because that 16-year-old here, that's like a high school sophomore. Could you imagine taking like a high school sophomore soccer team from like Knoxville and putting up
No,
against an MLS team? You know?
no, not even that. It's like putting a high school a sophomore, a high school sophomore quarterback, and put it as like a third or fourth stream to the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of that's just insane because I imagine he's still got room to grow. Like he isn't done growing. I would
Yeah,
imagine.
I mean, he had a really incredible match in the under 20 state championship game when Palmeiras faced Corinthians in Corinthians Stadium, and he really played an outstanding game and destroy it. So he has a room to improve, but I feel like it's like Abel Ferreira acknowledges he has great potential, that he's the future of Palmeiras, but he's like, I want to treat the kid slowly so he could develop without any pressure. That's I think what he wants to show. Corinthians, very disappointing performance. Very disappointing performance versus last place Juventude. Corinthians had two great. The offense was great. Two great goals by Juliano and by Juliano. Oh my God. And Vitor. And I feel like Corinthians play, but the defense was terrible, especially the transition between the defense and offense. The two goals Juventude scored was by mistakes of like exiting the defense area to like the midfield. The Corinthians just practically gave up two goals to Juventude. So Corinthians had a chance to be second place in the table, and now Corinthians now is like fourth place in the still in the Libertadores zone. But what worries me about the most, because next week is the biggest game for Corinthians this season. The first leg at home versus Flamengo, which I really hope to be there. Please, CBF, give my credential. I'm praying to the Lord. Please give me my credential for this huge historical matchup, which I think is going to define Corinthians' season. Because if Corinthians somehow pull it off, get the win at home, tie on the road, and win the Brazil Cup, the season is done. They accomplished. They got the title. This is the biggest title of the season. They win on the big game over a big opponent like Flamengo. But the way they played with their starters on Tuesday gives me a little worry. And Corinthians fans are think the same. And the second goal was scored by Yuri Alberto. Really beautiful goal. But like, I know you don't follow soccer, Brazil soccer much, but like, how should Corinthians fans worry when their defense don't play well, when they're going to face one of the best offense, not only in Brazil, in South America?
I mean, that doesn't seem like a great combination at all. You just got to hope your offense shows up and you're able to keep pace with the top tier offense you're going to face. Like in a way, it's kind of like, well, not necessarily like LSU, right? Because LSU has a decent defense, but for Corinthians, you gotta hope that maybe you have to consider a more defensive strategy just to help yourself out.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And also, they have to win at home the first leg, because if anything, if the Libertadores matchup between both of those teams show is that if Corinthians cannot make like a good lead on the first leg, they're done, because Flamengo at home in the playoffs in Brazilian Cup and Libertadores seems unbeatable, seems stronger than ever. So if Corinthians can make like a 1-0 or even 2-0 lead win, a 2-0 win going on a 2-0 lead to Rio, then it's another game. But if they tie or even lose to Flamengo, it's done. It's done. And and I was good, and then I have my pick. I think Corinthians gonna win 2-1 next week in Sao Paulo at Itaquera Stadium. What is your pick for the first leg of the Brazilian Cup?
They're not gonna like this. I'm going Flamingo. Flamingo's going in there, and they're gonna ruin their whole season because defense. Hey, offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships. Give me Corinthians. I
Uh,
know our Flamingo. Flamingo. Sorry, 2-1.
do you have a score at least? Because the first leg, then they had second leg.
Oh yeah, 2-1, and then Flamingo goes home and they win like 4-2. So
Whoa,
give me 6-3
whoa,
for the aggregate score.
whoa! That
My totally
second game.
scientific pick.
Whoa. I mean, I, for the overall, I think I picked Corinthians to win the title because if they won the first leg, I think they can tie the second. But I mean, Corinthians has to win next week. It has to win. They have if Corinthians not only if I don't say lose is the worst case scenario. Then it's over. But even if they tie, I don't think you can say that's a good result. Still, they have to make a good lead at home. And but speaking of Flamengo, Flamengo fans are not pleased as well because Flamengo seems to give up in the Brasileirão, in the Brazilian Championship. They tie scoreless with second place Internacional, so they basically lost the chance to get close to the top four. Now they're fifth place, 2 points behind Corinthians. The Flamengo actually only won one out of the last 5 games. So so Flamengo's kind of like hyped or good streak is in question right now. A lot of people are doubting Dorival Jr. Says he is not the coach for the future. Was just a good moment, but but starting next week is gonna start the playoff time. When they're gonna face Cor- Corinthians in the Brazil Cup final, and then at the end of the month they're gonna face Atlético Paranaense in the Libertadores final. So the real games, the let's say the moment of truth of Flamengo season starts next week as well. But but in terms of Brazilian Championship, Palmeiras has a 12-point lead with only 8 weeks left. So now it's just not it's not saying like when who's gonna win the championship is when what week Palmeiras gonna win the championship. I think it's gonna be by week 35 when they play Fortaleza at home. I think it's gonna be week 35. A lot of people are saying they can win even on week 33. I think that's too soon. They face a really hard schedule. They're gonna go on the road to Atlético Goianiense and then Sao Paulo, which is a derby, but not. I think with how big the lead is and how Palmeiras is like Palmeiras won the last 5 games. Palmeiras is the only team in the Brazilian Championship that won the last 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, so that's basically a near impossible lead for them to be able to blow at this point. Palmeiras, they've been so consistent in recent months. It just, I mean, they're going to win it. I mean, I don't know how many weeks it's going to take for them to do it, but they're going to get it done.
Yeah, and you mentioned consistency. That's the whole point of Abel Ferreira's team. And it's so funny. Like in soccer, everybody thought, oh, it's so unpredictable in games. But Palmeiras can be a predictable team, but with unpredictable ways to play. It's like everybody knows. It's like Palmeiras so consistent on being a very different team every week and find ways to win. So that's it. So that's the Brazilian. Just a last point. Also, this week it starts the Paulista Cup final. This is like a state tournament for teams in the São Paulo state who are like in the first, second, or third division, the state who are not playing in any national tournaments. 15 de Piracicaba, team from area here, plays Marília. I'm excited about that game. I'm broadcasting on Saturday, so always exciting to broadcast a final game.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like y'all are getting down to the end of the season there. So I mean, the games get bigger, and certainly you have to take advantage of all the opportunities you get to go call.
Yeah. So now let's go to hot
Hot
takes.
takes. Yeah. So on me, so we've seen a ton of coaches get fired early this year. We've seen Jeff Collins in the past week get fired by Georgia Tech. We saw Carl Dorrell get fired by Colorado. Oh man, we have a blocked field goal. Blocked field goal in this game. The Broncos tried to take the lead, and the Colts were able to block Brandon McManus's kick. So it's still 6-6. Getting late in the third quarter, only 4 minutes late there in the left there in the third quarter. Man, oof. I bet there's some boo birds. I have it muted, but I bet there is some booing going on in Denver. But anyway, back to my take. Yeah, and then probably most surprisingly, we saw Paul Chryst at Wisconsin get fired on Sunday. Granted, they lost to Illinois last week, but we've seen at least what was it like 6, 7 coaches already get fired early on this year in college football. This trend is getting kind of crazy, right? Like it feels like there's almost a list of coaches going into any given season where if you lose a game or two, you're done, right? And it depends on how you lose. And it's kind of surprising that Brian Harsin is not one of those coaches yet. But it just seems like, firing a coach 3-4 weeks into a season and expecting the team to be able to just put up with it the rest of the year. I don't know. I don't think that's that fair to the players because, it's not like firing the coach in week 3 is going to fix things. But I don't know if I can even completely blame these schools. It's the NCAA's fault for having an early signing day and forcing these schools to try to move up their timeline of hiring a coach early. I think that we should move early signing day back to February so teams don't feel so rushed in, September and October to make a coaching change. Because I think a coach should get an entire season, at least close to an entire season, to see if they can change things, Especially a coach like Paul Chryst, it's had a lot of success. And it's a really crazy trend because you don't see this in NFL, for the most part. You see coaches, they get a full year or close to a full year to prove themselves or to change things. So
I
in
mean,
college football, it seems like coaches have no leeway.
definitely early signing day changed. When coaches get fired now, especially when they're like on second or third or even fourth season and cannot get results. They rather get rid of the coach early and find a coach, during the season to think about recruiting period, especially early signing. Then to wait the season to play itself and really really bad, and then fire by the end of the season and lose all that period of early signing day. It's a great
Yeah,
point.
but the problem with that is you're not going to fire, or you're probably not going to find a coach midway through the season unless they're just not coaching. But most of these teams are going to have to go out and hire a coach from a different school right now. And those coaches are not going to leave their school until the end of their season. So you're not getting a jump anyway on early signing day. Your class is kind of falling apart as is. And for your existing team, you got to imagine that it's probably going to destroy morale unless you do a really good job with your interim coach. So, and then again, we saw at Georgia Tech though last week. They went up and beat Pittsburgh a week after firing Jeff Collins. So, maybe there is something to it. But then again, we saw what Nebraska did against Oklahoma. They got absolutely ran out of the stadium, and Oklahoma, as it turns out, is not very good. So, I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting trend. I'm curious to see if it continues because it just seems like it's getting really crazy right now with all the
It,
coaches getting fired so early.
college football right now reminds me a lot of Brazilian soccer. It's like because Brazilian soccer, there's no direction. It's like Santos fired their coach a month ago, and they're still on their interim head coach, and they have no direction of what they wanted to hire as a coach. They try a Brazilian coach that had a lot of success in the past, Luxemburgo. He didn't want it. They tried Marcelo Bielsa, very good Argentinian head coach, did not get him because Santos is such a, let's compare like Santos to Nebraska. It's such a train wreck that that nobody wants to go because of all the uncertainty. So college football right now reminds me a lot of Brazilian soccer with the uncertainty and the rush to fire coaches.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a great comparison. Now, we've talked about the similarities between Brazilian soccer and college football before, and this might be unfortunately becoming one of those changes. And I think it's going to be another case where the haves and have-nots are really going to distinguish themselves because some schools are going to be able to do the hiring and firing of coaches over and over again. Some schools are going to not be able to afford this. And I think it's really going to drive a further wedge between those who could be competitive in the sport and those who cannot be.
Oh yeah, and the trends. Now, for example, teams were like you know uh, the teams following the trends. Like Palmeiras and Flamengo got really good Portuguese coaches. Everybody was trying to hire Portuguese coaches, but it doesn't work. Like Corinthians and Botafogo got Portuguese coaches, and they're both rivals to Palmeiras and Flamengo. They're okay, they're not good because it's not only the coach, it's about the team itself, about the whole operation. But that's an interesting trend. And let's see, interesting what college football holds ahead. But my hot take is about coaches as well. uh Brazilian Confederation CEO Edivaldo Rodrigues said that he might think of the possibility of hiring a foreigner coach to replace Tite, who announced earlier this year he's not gonna remain the Brazil head coach, winning or not the World Cup. And I think Abel Ferreira deserves. He's the best coach of Brazil by far. Winning the Brazilian championship, he would have won all the titles he could possibly won as a Palmeiras head coach. Brazilian championship, Libertadores, state championship. Only the FIFA World Cup he couldn't win, but that's another game. He came close versus Chelsea this year, but I think Abel Ferreira deserves more than Cuca or Renato Gaúcho, which are the two top favorites Brazilian coaches, but don't have success in the last 3 seasons. I know Cuca and Renato Gaúcho, went to the Libertadores finals as a Santos and Flamengo head coaches, but they both lost to Abel Ferreira. Both of those coaches who are being rumored to be the next Brazilian head coach lost to Abel Ferreira in Libertadores finals.
Yeah, at some point you just got to swallow your pride and hire the best coach, especially when you think about you're heading into a World Cup where you haven't won the World Cup in 20 years, and now your main rival, their superstar, has announced it's it. This is his last one, and I know you guys, and I wanted to ask you about this. If you guys get to play Argentina at some point, I know you guys are going to want to end the career of Messi.
Yeah, but it reminds me a lot of the 1990 World Cup, was like the last full Maradona's World Cup. I know he played in 1994, but it doesn't count because he had a lot of issues off the field. He was with doping and everything. But 1990, last full World Cup for Maradona, he destroyed Brazil. He played really great match. So, but Messi, I mean, he, everybody remembers the 2014 World Cup. That should be Messi's World Cup, winning the World Cup in Brazil. But Gonzalo Higuain couldn't score an easy goal, and then Mario Götze just got it done for Germany. But it would be a great way to end Messi's career with the Vini Jr. and Neymar goal. I would have loved that as a Brazilian fan.
Right. And it sounds like um, this guy's going to be potentially your best bet to do that.
Oh yeah. So that's it for two countries, two Americas all sports. One of our longest episodes, but it's October. So many sports
Yep,
happening
it's
right
October.
now.
All Yeah, and we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary as well. Like I have to look up exactly what day it was, but I know it has to be within the next couple of weeks. So we've almost done this for
Yeah,
a full year, guys.
it makes me really proud to have a podcast with you, Nicholas Hill. It makes me really.
Absolutely. We are defining bound or not defining bound. We are uh, doing this despite of our boundaries.
We are we're yeah. It's like we're making yeah, like despite the boundaries, we're still be able to talk about our country sports. And like again, the only podcast that talk about sports for two countries, like we say, two countries, two Americas, all sports. Like there's no other podcast
Absolutely.
that talk about sports from two different countries.
Exactly. We're going to continue moving on down the road because there's going to be a lot to talk about. We've got baseball, playoff baseball, and the meat of college football, meat of NFL, meat of Brazilian soccer. We've got the World Cup coming up in a few weeks. That's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. So, yeah, we're going to have a lot of topics to talk about. So
So
stay tuned,
for
folks.
Gus Tomazeli down in Americana, São Paulo, Brazil, and Nicholas Hill down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That was episode 44 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. Tune in next week for more. Have a good night.
We won't stop until we get y'all, till we get y'all. Say yeah.